Hey everyone, Mortgage Nerd here. So what happened between the year 2000 and 2008 that led up to the market crash? In the 90s and early 2000s, there were a lot of mortgage guidelines that were loosened up because the presidents said that they wanted underprivileged people, minorities, to qualify for more properties. So they said, let's loosen up the guidelines. Let's make it easier for people to buy a property. So if you loosen up the mortgage guidelines, that means people who had worse credit would qualify. And I mean, yeah, hey, great. You're helping people that are probably in a lower socioeconomic position, but you're not actually helping them. Helping them would be educating them to get a better credit score to then buy a property. But I digress. Then as the decade went on, 2004, 2005, value started really rising. So people started buying property to then flip it. They were investors, but remember the guidelines are easier. So they were qualifying to buy properties just on credit, not on income. They didn't have to show income or assets or anything like that. They buy a property under the thought that, hey, when this property finishes being built, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to buy it and rent it for 6 months or a year, and then I'm going to sell it. I'm going to make money. Even though the rent was upside down, they were paying more mortgage than their rent payment. So you were negative every month at that time. Now rent is higher than mortgages, even with the higher interest rates. So people were buying out of speculation, not because they could buy and hold. They also weren't qualifying for a lot of these mortgages because they weren't showing their income or their assets. They were just doing it based off of credit, the Nina loans, the Ninja loans, all that stuff. I remember, if you watch the movie Big Short, you'll see a lot of this and what happened like at the higher levels of banks. I remember at the beginning of 2007, I was already in the mortgage business for a couple of years, and I saw the first bank to go under was called New Century. And it's a bank that we used a lot. We'd send them a lot of business because a lot of people in the mortgage business were doing these crappy loans. It's what it was. It's how I learned in the business. I learned what not to do from the very beginning. So New Century went out of business. So there's a website back then called the Implodometer, and it would show you which banks are going out of business at the time. And throughout that entire year, a lot of banks started going out of business. They all went under because they couldn't sell those loans. I mean, there were so many issues. So if there's no one to lend, then there's no buyers to buy because you can't buy a property if you don't have a mortgage for the most part. But yet the inventory was sky high. Why was the inventory sky high? Why was there such a gluttony of supply of all these houses? Because everybody that bought those houses out of speculation, empty houses, they bought them to flip them. Not because there were families that could fill them. It was an entire decade-long issue. So supply was super high, demand was non-existent because no banks would lend. That caused the values to go down. That caused a market crash. Analyze where we are now. Do we have any of those issues at all? Supply is the opposite. There is no inventory. Demand is sky high. Good demand. People that qualify for mortgages to buy their own properties because household numbers are increasing. There aren't enough houses to fill those household numbers. It's the opposite of 2008. Mortgage Nerd out.